Max Markson, thanks for joining us on the show.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me, Jake.
You're very welcome. Welcome to the Executive Centre in Melbourne.
Very special
Nice
Executive Centre.
views and everything.
I give you Melbourne.
That's right, welcome. So obviously celebrities and everything represent publicist, promoter, PR man, organiser. You are, I think it's fair to say, just as famous as the people you represent.
You're kind. I never think of myself like that, but I appreciate the compliment. Thank you.
You're very welcome. We'll start from the beginning, because you had such an interesting life from the very start. It was just fascinating growing up as a young boy in England.
Yes.
Because your father sort of introduced you to the world of showbiz, to the world of entertainment.
Yeah, my dad was a high diver, and he had an aqua show, which is like an ice show, but in water with synchronized swimmers and divers. And as a kid, we had the show in Bournemouth on the south coast of England, and I used to be the spotlight operator. But I'd fall asleep to wake me up, and the light was shining in the wrong place.
Did you, because what did you learn from him in that sense as a performer, in the spotlight operator, or just what you saw growing up with him?
A promoter's life is really scary because unless you sell enough tickets, you don't make money.
Yes.
So I think that was one of the things and I still tell people today who want to be a promoter, I said it's like gambling because you put the money down for the talent and you've got to sell enough tickets. And if you sell enough tickets, you make a profit. If you don't, you lose money.
That's right.
And even you could speak to some of the biggest promoters in the world today, they still can lose money. It's a risk. I mean, not everybody is like an Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift who sells out hundreds of thousands of tickets when they do a tour. Some people, if you miss the curve, they don't sell enough, and then it's cost you a lot of money. That's
right. Very good. So it's just really hit and miss. And I found reading the book, and you mentioned your dad throughout the book, which is just on the road with Bill Clinton and Nelson Mandela and Kim Kardashian and Arnold Schwarzenegger and many other great names, which we'll get to. I found a bit of a parallel between your father and Charlie Chaplin when he was growing up with his dad, because his dad was also a music hall performer.
Yes.
And young Charlie would go and watch his father perform and sometimes even partake when he was very, very little. And just interesting, in the late 1800s, growing up in that time on what was then the vaudeville circuit.
Look, I didn't have as tough an upbringing as Charlie Chaplin. I mean, his mother was in the workhouse in the late 1800s. He didn't have a home, and that was a real struggle. For me, I think I had a lovely childhood.
Yes.
Right, we always had a home, and I was very fortunate that I got a bursary to go to a school in England called Carmel College. So I went to boarding school when I was 10 years old, and that was a spectacular school, and I had a great education, and there's still friends from then who I still speak to and to this day. My father died when I was 15, and I think that was a pivotal point in my life. I came home from boarding school to live with my mum in Bournemouth on the south coast. I got a job as a spotlight operator because I'd done that as a kid at a nightclub for 50 pence a night. and the other thing I think is the fact that for me, when I look back at my dad dying at 15, that was the worst thing that could happen to me. So from there was this sort of edge. So if I wanted to push anything to the edge, what can go wrong if I lose money, or if anything goes wrong, it's not as bad as my father dying. So I'd take risks and took things to the edge, as it were.
Yeah, that's right. And did you do any acting or performing in school?
I've never been
at all.
I've never been an actor or performer in my life, okay. but I enjoy if I've got an MC something. I'm happy to do that, and if I'm doing an event, if I'm doing a news commentary, I do that. But if I'm doing an event, I always make sure I've got a professional MC doing it. I don't do it.
Correct.
But I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the media. I enjoy getting the publicity for my clients. That's something I enjoy, and I have fun doing it.
Yeah. At age 21, you came to Australia for what was meant to be a short trip. You fell in love with the place and said, "This is my home. This is where I'll make my mark." Markson.
Markson, but I didn't know I was going to stay here. When I came, I was just coming for a holiday, and then I wanted to extend the visa from 3 months for another 6 months, which I got, and then I wanted to stay a bit longer, and I got told to get out of the country 3 times. I got given 14 days to get out of the country. And the first time I went and said, "Look, I'm getting engaged to this girl, and I bought her an engagement ring," and they said, "No, you haven't really," and they were correct. I was, I hadn't, and wasn't going to marry her. And then the second time, somebody else tried to help me, and that didn't work. And then the third time, he just passed away recently, a federal MP called John Abel, who I knew, and he was friends with Michael McKellar, the then immigration minister. At the time, I was running a nightclub called the Zoo. I was the head zookeeper and employing people, and they gave me a residency. So I was very, very lucky.
The Zoo, that's right. And from there, you got celebrities to come there. You had Brooke Shields when she was just starting out. You had cricket stars.
Correct.
You had a whole range of people.
I had every week I'd have a different celebrity as guest DJ. So Brooke Shields, Evel Knievel, Dennis Lilly, Jeff Boycott, Warren Mitchell, all sorts of weird and wonderful people. Every week we'd have a guest DJ on. And then I left that and went to work for a radio station, 2WS, and I was there for 2 years. And I started my business up, Marks and Sparks, in 1982.
38 years.
That was last century.
I know. And 38 years, it is still going as strong as ever. It is the largest, the most successful publicity promotions company in Australia, and one of the best in the world, and most well known in the world too, I should mention.
Look, I'm very fortunate that I've been able to make a living out of doing publicity, because I'd never learnt about it, but I just was lucky to have a nose for a story. And the publicity is one part of the business, which is my main business. I still do that today, setting up interviews and stories on TV, press, radio, magazine, online. So that's one part of my business. Another part is doing events, and I've done over 200 charity events and given over $40 million to charity.
Well done.
As part of that, I've hosted Nelson Mandela, President Clinton, President Bush Sr., Rudy Giuliani, Al Gore, Tony Blair, Mike Tyson, Pele, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a host of personalities. And then separate to that, I represent a lot of people, handling whether it's the Married at First Sight stars, or whether it's gold medalist Matthew Mitchum, Nova Paris, cross-channel swimmer Susie Moroney. Different people I represent and do their deals for them and charge 20% commission. And then separate to that, I just think I've got the entree to get any celebrity in the world I want. So I'm working on an event that's in Melbourne in July called cospendium.com.au, which is a Comic-Con, and it's cosplay, and it's a 2-day event on July 4 and 5, and I'm organising all the celebrities to come. So we've already announced that William Shatner, Captain Kirk, is coming,
Nice.
and Mel Gibson is coming. So people can go to cospendium.com.au and they can buy to have a meet and greet and photo with those people. And there'll be a host of others we're announcing. We're working on that at the moment. So that's really exciting. And if you've never been to a Comic-Con, or as they're called, it's another world, and it's something that's fun. Cosplay, do you know what cosplay is?
Yes.
So cosplay, you get dressed up in your favourite Superman costume or hero's costume. It really is a fun, nice event.
It does. It brings out the life in people, and just to see, because it's being held, I assume, where it's being held this
The
year?
Royal Melbourne
Yes.
Exhibition Building,
Okay.
which was the home of Australia's first ever parliament. So it's
Yes.
a historic building. It's a spectacular
It
building.
is. And I remember once seeing, I think it was last year, from previous years, I think it was held at the Exhibition Centre, which is the same place as where the Arnold Classic is.
Yeah.
And to haven't gone to both, go from one extreme to the other, from the most sports fanatic people to the most, costumes and everything. It really is just great to have all that coming together. But I do want to ask you, you mentioned before that you didn't have, when you started your company in 1982, what sort of, well, most of it was really on-the-job training and previous experience in terms of promotions and publicity. Like, did you go to university to study that?
No, I failed. I couldn't get into university. I think when I was in England, you have to do A-levels, and I'd passed my O-levels at 16. I failed my A-levels. I was going to become a chartered accountant, and there was a chartered accountant who was going to let me do his articles at his company. And I failed my exams because I started promoting pop groups and BBC Radio 1 disc jockeys in Bournemouth at the club I'd been spotlighting at. And the guy said, "We can still go and do them again. I'll still hold the position for you." And I failed again, and I just kept on promoting. So that was my problem.
Worked out in the end. Did you ever do, what was that show they used to have, Top of the Pops, I think it was called?
I didn't do Top of the Pops, no. I was never on it. I didn't DJ.
No,
or
to
sing.
manage people, the acts on there.
Some of the acts, yeah. Hot Chocolate, I promoted them. I promoted The Real Thing. I promoted all sorts of different bands, and just for one night. So I had one band who I was putting a rock band on every week in, I think it was 1976.
Wow.
And it was really on price. And this agent rings up, so I've got this band, they're $300. great, I'll take them. What's their name? He says, they're from Australia. They're called AC/DC. For $300 now, you could barely buy 2 or 3 tickets to go see one of the shows. But then I could book the whole band for $300. It was cheap.
My goodness, what a story. Going from there, the band, to the 70s, from radio, then your own business, the 1980s in Sydney. You started off, small, obviously, and humble, like you said, worked your way up, and then the 90s, I think 1990 was the first major celebrity, was a former athlete, wasn't it?
Jane Fleming,
Yes.
I started managing then. She just won 2 gold medals at the Commonwealth Games. And from there, the talent representation business started. So and I still do that today, obviously.
Correct.
And I was just lucky. I had Jane Fleming, who'd won gold medals. She introduced me to Andrew Lloyd. I was doing work for him. Next thing, Ita Buttrose rang me. Kamal, I was mates with, so I said, I'll manage you. And Jeff Fennick, Wally Masur, Greg Matthews, the cricketer, and it just rolled from there. And to this day, I still get people approaching me to represent them. So I really am fortunate and blessed.
One of the largest and most famous people, or most successful and historic and everything you can think of, was Nelson Mandela in the year 2000,
Yes.
which ties in with your book here. He was the first sort of person hosted and organised as far as an international stage is concerned. How did that come about? Because that was a huge.
I've been doing some PR work for this guy who was called Richard Lubner, and he'd had a place in Darling Harbour in Sydney called One World Sport. It's not there anymore. And I used to get a sports star behind the bar once a week, and a couple of pretty girls, one of whom was the late Annalise Brackensick, and the other one was Jodie Mears. And then he rings me up one day, he said, what about Nelson Mandela? I said, what, to surf behind the bar? He said, no, to come over here. I said, yeah. And I put an offer in for $1 million US to bring him over, because I figured I could make money from it. And next thing, it's announced that Mandela's coming. And I rang my mate up and said, what's going on? I said, well, I'll find out. And his dad was mates with Mandela, spoke to Mandela. Mandela apologised, said, look, my office has booked these events in, but I'll do yours for free. So, and we raised money for his charity. So I did a private luncheon on Monday the 4th of September 2000, where James Packer hosted it. We sold 20 tickets at $25,000 a head for Mandela's charity. I did a function that evening, which then Lion Nathan, the brewing group, hosted, and we did tickets at $250 a head and $1,000 a head. And we sold that out, and I invited former Prime Ministers Gough Whitlam, Malcolm Fraser and Bob Hawke to come along. We had the Premier there at the time. And that was a success. And I did another private function from Nelson Mandela the next day. So that's really how I got into the international political people. A year later, I was fortunate to host President Clinton, which we had I had him in Australia on 9/11.
Yeah, but going back to Mandela, as if
Yes.
that wasn't busy enough, hosting him at Melbourne and Sydney and elsewhere, you were also, I think, the media director for the Sydney Olympics, which was just around the corner.
At the same time,
Yeah.
My voluntary gig, I was in the Australian Olympic team. I didn't win a gold medal, but so I was living in the village, so I had to get permission from John Coates to leave the village to host the Mandela functions. And the Olympics was an amazing time. It was a month, and it was just so exciting. And if anybody's never been to the Olympics and gets the chance to go to one, they should go, even if you're not competing or being the media person.
Weren't you, I think I read in the book, you had to wear your Olympic blazer or something? You had to get special permission not to wear it?
No.
Was that something like that I read?
No, I wore my Olympic uniform because I got issued uniform as well as all the athletes did. And there's a special suit you have, which is like a dark green suit and a beautiful tie and all that. So I wore that with pride, and I've still got it at home. I don't know if I can fit in it. I should try and see if I can fit in it still. I probably can.
But the man himself, Nelson Mandela, what was he like meeting you when you saw him for the first time? This is someone you've watched and seen for years, in prison, then as president of South Africa, and here he is in Australia. To see the man himself, what was that?
Incredible presence. At the time, the first function we did this private luncheon, which James Packer hosted, and I'd had a kid ring me up about a month before saying, oh, can I come and do work experience? I said, sure. And it was that week we were doing the function. I said, wear a suit just in case you get to meet Nelson Mandela. And on the day it happened, it was his first day coming to work, do work experience. I said, come to the function. And because we only had 20 people at the luncheon, but we didn't have massive staff. And it was at the Hilton Hotel because Mandela had some arrangement with the Hilton. And James Packer went to get him from the room, came down, and they're walking with Mandela's security guy. And Mandela breaks away from James Packer and the security guy and walks over to me, and I'm standing next to this kid, and he just wants to see the kid. This kid's 16, and he puts his arm around him and says, "Why aren't you at school today?" Right? And Mandela was at the function that night. He spoke, and before he got on stage, we'd had the Australian Girls Choir, the ones from Qantas, and they sang the Australian national anthem. And at the end of it, he got up from his chair, walked across, and as every one of those girls stepped on the stage, he shook their hands and said, "Thank you very much, thank you very much." He was just so warm. And when he spoke on stage, one of the things he said, "Look, normally I only speak for 10 minutes or so, but because you are so important, I will speak longer tonight." He's just a very, I guess, humble person.
Yeah, he is. And I remember watching him on Oprah as well, just how he spoke and everything. But I do want to get to Bill Clinton, because his name is on the book. In fact, it's the biggest out of all the names mentioned on this book, On the Road with Bill Clinton.
And I gave him 2 chapters in the book as well.
Yes, you did. But you kept referencing him throughout the book, and obviously I think it's fair to say, out of all the people you've worked with over the years, or at least on the international stage, he's probably the one you've had the closest relationship with, or closest friendship.
Yeah, I've known him since 2001. I've taught him 4 times. We did the first time we had him here on the 8th, 9th and 10th of September 2001, and then obviously hosted him on the day of 9/11. Then I brought him back again in February, March. We did 8 days on the road, and we had fun. We literally had fun. We did karaoke one night. We played golf. I mean, he's a fun guy. I took him to New Zealand later in 2002. And I brought him back again in 2006, and we did Australia and New Zealand. And the last time I saw him was about 18 months ago in New York, and we've got correspondence from him. So I love that man. He's just an amazing, amazing gentleman.
It is. But I love reading that particular chapter. Like you said, you were doing karaoke up until the early hours, just you and him and about 20 other Secret Service men, doing Beatles, doing just about every song you could think of. Which is not something you would normally do, that mental image, with the former president of the United States.
You don't normally do it. But karaoke is good fun. Yes. And we did it here in Melbourne. It was February 2002, and we were on the middle of this. We'd been in Perth, Adelaide, and Melbourne, and we finished up doing Brisbane and Sydney. And we were in Melbourne, and one of the staff members, and we always used to love doing karaoke down at Crown. They had a karaoke bar there called Fidel's. And one of the staff said, "President Clinton, we're going to do karaoke later on. Will you come and join us?" And he said, "Sure." Anyway, after the event, we all went down there to do karaoke, and I rang up to his room. He said, "Do you want to come down?" And his EA guy, assistant or person who was his minder, Doug Band, said, "Look, no, we're in for the night now." So I said, "Fine." So we're doing karaoke, and next thing, phone rings, and it's Doug Band said, "Look, we're coming down." So at like midnight or 12:30 in the morning, President Clinton comes down. So we did karaoke till 3 in the morning. And he and I sang the Beatles song, "There are places I have been to in my life. I've loved them all." So we did that song. It was one of his favourites. We did New York, New York, all of us, obviously. He wanted to do Elton John song, Joe Cocker, Up Where We Belong. So we had fun. We did karaoke, as you do.
Someone had a camera to capture that moment, because it's one of those things that doesn't happen very often, and to be in that presence. And were there other people there, or was it just you guys?
No, it was just we had a private room there.
Okay.
I had another great moment in 2006. We'd been in Sydney, then we flew to Melbourne, then we flew from Melbourne to Auckland after that function, and it's I'm on the he'd invited me to come on the private plane with him, which was very kind, and we get into Auckland about midnight. And everybody goes off to their rooms. I'm looking after President Clinton. I'm in his room, and there's just the 2 of us, and there's a load of food because the staff were going to come in and eat with us there. And there's a saxophone sitting there, and they put it in the room for him. So he picks up, and I get this private concert. He did that Dave Brubeck number, do. So I had a private gig performance by President Clinton on his saxophone. It was sweet.
There you go. I liked how he had that sense of humour. He was, and I guess we all are. We want to be kids at times, from time to time, and there was a story you told in the book about how there was you and President Clinton and some of his people. One of his men, I'm not sure what his name was, went to the men's room, and Clinton said, "Let's all play hide and seek" from him, and hid behind the bushes or something.
We did. That was in Perth at Coco's, which is a great restaurant, and it was Brian Doyle, the comedian, who'd been with us, and he'd gone off to the bathroom, and then we all hid. When he came back, he was a bit, we thought we'd run away. He starts huffing off, and we came up, we're here. And then he finished up telling the joke as part of his joke when we got to Adelaide the next day, saying, you cost me a beer. I left a beer there. Next day we're in still in Adelaide, and President Clinton. We went and saw a movie, and after the movie, he bought Brian a beer. Next day we're in Melbourne, and Brian Doyle says, "Well, look, you cost me a beer in Adelaide. You cost me a beer in Perth. You bought me a beer in Adelaide, but the beer you cost me in Perth was a Crown Lager worth $8. The beer you bought me in Adelaide was a VB worth $4. You owe me $4." And when President Clinton came down to do karaoke with us, the first thing he did when he walked in the room was walk over to Brian Doyle and give him the $4. Right. So it was sweet.
Those are precious moments. And obviously, President Clinton's people were so impressed with you, they said, President Bush, Senior will be here in a few months. Can you do the same for him? Can you host him?
And we did, yeah. That was on Melbourne Cup Day in 2001. Yeah. Wow. President Bush Senior, who's obviously passed since then, he was at Melbourne Cup lunch, and we had Bob Hawke there because they were friends, and he introduced him. So I've been so lucky in the sort of people I've been privileged to meet and work with.
One interesting story was about, I think out of all of them, was persuading Mayor Rudy Giuliani to come here to do his tour. And one of the things is, firstly, when on earth, Max, do you get a break? When do you get a holiday?
Look, on a Friday normally when I get home, my wife she will not let me do anything for the weekend, so I'm not allowed to do anything. So I just rest all weekend, and Monday start again. So normally just binge watch Netflix, TV, stuff like that. So that's when I break. The
story about Mayor Rudy Giuliani was fascinating. New York Mayor, post 9/11, he's always left from office. You were very keen to have him do a tour in Australia and elsewhere. You were calling his people numerous times, please come to Australia, we'll organise something. No. You knew someone who knew him. You're on holiday on a resort somewhere.
Bali.
You get a call saying, please come to New York. You say, when? They say, tomorrow. You're there.
I got on a plane straight away. So I literally got off the phone, booked the flight, got to New York straight away. And literally in 2 or 3 hours later, I was on a plane. And then I got to meet Giuliani for the first time in his office. And there was all his staff around. And
was that intimidating?
No, not at all. And I bought a book for him. It's Winston Churchill's book by Roy Jenkins. And I said, I wanted to give you this as a present. And he said, I read that book on the night of 9/11 and for inspiration about how Churchill handled what was going on. Mm. And I said, well, the reason I brought it for you, and I turned to about 110 or whatever it was a tale about Mark Twain hosted a visit by Winston Churchill to New York, and Churchill earned $100. And I said, I'm going to give you a lot more money than that to come to Australia. And then he was, I was taking an offer at the time, I think it was $800,000 for 8 engagements, something like that. And he said, can you do more? I said, well, I want to under-promise and over-deliver. That's what apparently Kerry Packer told James Packer, under-promise and over-deliver. And it was like a light switch went on his head. And he turned around and behind him on the counter, wherever it was, he brought out the galleys for his book that wasn't published at that stage. And right at the beginning, the 8th chapter is under-promise and over-deliver.
Wow.
So I got on well with him. And when we finished up getting him a couple of years later, it took, that was 2002, he came in 2003. We toured, Lachlan Murdoch lent us the News Limited private plane, which was very kind of him. And we're sitting there on the plane we did a lot everywhere, and we're going across to New Zealand from Canberra, and I'm watching, he'd just got married to Judith, who's now divorced from, but at the time they hadn't watched the video of the wedding, so we're sitting watching, there's Donald Trump, there's this one, there's that one, very interesting.
The who's who.
Yeah, basically, I'm watching the wedding video. Sweet.
Because when there was something interesting, because when he had his tour in Australia, well, elsewhere, but in particular Australia, it was meant to be covering all of Australia, but then there was another speaking agency, I guess, managing some of them, including Melbourne, which was cancelled due to low ticket sales. And I'm reading in the book, it says, you asked him, how was Melbourne? He said it was cancelled, and I stayed in my hotel room. And he thought, you know, his people that managed him, how hopeless as hosts. You don't come other side of the world to a great city just to stay in your hotel room. There's no hosting.
I'm big on that when I'm bringing somebody from overseas or I'm involved with looking after them. I really think it's important to look after them.
Yes.
It's not the same as if you book somebody and they come in just to do a lunch and they arrive at 11:30, they speak at 12 o'clock, have lunch, and then they leave at 2 o'clock. When you've got somebody in your country for a week, it's not the 5 events of 3 or 4 hours each. It's the other 140 hours in the week when you really need to look after them. It's the downtime, and that I think is really important. And I always try to take them to the great restaurants with fabulous views. If there's things they want to do and have beautiful experiences, whether it's if you're in Melbourne, go and see the vineyards or go down to the penguins. I just think it's really important. In Sydney, the Sydney Harbour, you have to go on the harbour, and I've done that a few times, more than a few times. And I remember I took Arnold. Took President Clinton. I try and take everybody on the harbour, but I remember taking Arnold Schwarzenegger out with his son Patrick, and I had a mate of mine who owns Manjit's Indian restaurant. I got them to cater for us, and the chef came. Varun, who's a one-hatted chef, fantastic chef, is cooking the food and brought the food out and brought turbans with because they always have turbans. Next thing, there's Arnold and his son Patrick with their turbans on. Arnold smoking a cigar. This was funny, and the following year when Arnold came back for the Arnold Sports Festival, he said he was with his partner Heather. And said, I'd really love to, after we finish this in Melbourne, I want to go up to Sydney. Can you organise to go on the boat again to see the harbour? I want to show Heather the harbour. So we did that again on the harbour. We've been out for a couple of hours, and then we're sitting at the end of the boat with Arnold, Heather, Arnold's right-hand man, Daniel Ketchel, and myself. And all that weekend, I'd made Arnold work, done all the media, and he said to me, you are my pimp and I am your whore. And I said, how do I scale? You've been in Hollywood like 50 years. How do I scale it? I said, oh, you're up there, Max. You're up there.
That's a good Arnold too, by the way. When you do contact these people,
yes,
like Bill Clinton, Rudy, Arnold, etc., do you find as the years go on, as you get more recognised, you don't sort of have to put yourself out there? You find that they generally come to you more than the other way?
Both. And I can wake up in the morning and get the most incredible offers of the most incredible personalities. And it's normally from the agents because my reputation, I've always paid the bills with all the agents and paid millions of dollars. And I'm very insistent on paying the talent, especially from overseas. You've got to pay them in advance. So you pay them a chunk of money when you sign the contract. You always pay the balance at least a month before they come so that they come. And whenever you hear about somebody not coming, it's because the promoter has not paid them. Either because they couldn't sell the tickets and they cancel out of the contract, or because they literally don't pay them. And if you don't pay them, they're not going to get on the plane. So I always pay them, and then they come. And
that was another thing you mentioned too, over and over in the book, having the money, like you were saying. I think when you first started with Nelson Mandela, you offered X amount, and you didn't know if you could get it, or if you had it, or what was going to happen, and this and the other. And it's something that it's always in the back of your mind. Because you never know if the event is cancelled. Can he sell enough tickets, like you said?
You've got to believe in yourself that you're going to do it. But I always remember in Richard Branson's first book, I think Losing My Virginity, throughout the whole book, he's never got enough money. He's always 100 grand short, 100 million short. It just keeps on going all the way through the book. And sometimes, when you're doing an event, I remember the first time I hosted President Clinton, we did 3 events in 3 days. The first event was the Children's Hospital at Westmead, and I paid President Clinton for the 3 events $450,000 US, which at the time was $900,000 Australian. And these figures are all public. They're in Hillary Clinton's returns as a senator at the time. And I rang a friend of mine, a guy called Graham Mapp, who's been on the rich list since it started in Australia, and he was very kind. He gave me an office when I first launched my business. And I said, I want to raise money for the Children's Hospital. Got President Clinton, and he very kindly put up the $150,000 US, which obviously I gave him back. And we cleared about $1.2 million profit for the Children's Hospital from that. And the next day I did another function, which again I had the people it was the New South Wales Labour Union or something like that, and they put up the money. And then the third function, Andrew Peacock and Michael Kroger did it in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And they did a private function, I think, of 20 people paying 30 grand a head, or 30 people paying 20 grand a head. So they put the money up and all that. But it's if you make a commitment, you have to run through with it and make it happen.
Yeah, and you just got to believe in yourself, like you said. And one thing I took from this book, and I take this with everything, I guess, as a technique, the worst they can do is say no.
Yeah, well, I learned that from a guy called Terry McAuliffe, who raised funds for President Clinton for both his election campaigns, like hundreds of millions of dollars. And then he finished up becoming the governor of Virginia. But when I met him, it was in 2002, and I'd just done some work for the Clinton Foundation. We'd done a private function in New Zealand after I'd done a public function for BMW. I did a private function for the foundation where we sold 20 tickets at $25,000 a head for a private afternoon tea with President Clinton. And I finished up getting to meet Terry McAuliffe in New York a few months later. And I said to him, what's the secret to raising money? Because you've raised hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he said, just ask. The worst they can do is say no. So that's as simple as that.
And if you have a big ticket person like President Clinton or someone like that, that generally helps a lot, hopefully.
I'm a firm believer in having marquee names.
Yeah.
So I'm privileged. I'm hosting, doing publicity for Jean-Claude Van Damme's visit in March. I'm doing publicity again for Tony Doherty for the Arnold Sports Festival with Arnold Schwarzenegger in mid-March. I'm doing work for Shaquille O'Neal's visit for the Hour Group in June. For Cospendium, we've got Mel Gibson and William Shatner. And you know, if you look after those people, they'll be fine. But yet, to get anybody, you have to look after them, and you've got to ask. And President Clinton's people taught me something which is really important: is no surprises. So they said, if there's something you want to do, don't just drop it on to the last minute.
Yeah.
Ask in advance. If we can do it, we'll do it. If we can't, we won't, and we'll tell you. But it's better than not having surprises.
I like that.
It's better than having surprises. Right?
Yeah, I like that a lot. Speaking of who's coming tonight?
Well, tonight as we speak, which will be last week when this goes to air, is the UFC Fighter of the Year, Jorge Masvidal, who last year did the fastest knockout in UFC history, 5 seconds.
Yes.
He came out, you can get the video. He comes out and he does a knee bang to the guy's head down. As he said, the knee is the hardest bone in the body, and he just could see this guy was ready for it. And Jorge Masvidal is a humble, beautiful man, not aggressive in any way, shape or form. Nothing is too much trouble for him. And he's a superstar. And he's the hottest fighter in the UFC at the moment, hotter than Conor McGregor. He's just such a firebrand, and he's just explosive as a fighter. And in 2017 he had a couple of defeats, and he didn't compete for 16 months. Wow. And he obviously, something happened in those 16 months where he reinvented himself in some way. He was in the middle of the jungle like on a Survivor show with other celebrities. But something must have motivated him, because he's come back, and in 2019 he did 3 amazing victories. The first one, he went and fought in England, away ground, beat a guy who was undefeated. Then he did the 5-second victory. And then just in November at Madison Square Garden, in front of 12,000 people, including Roberto Duran, The Rock, and President Trump on his first UFC fight. He beat Nate Diaz for the BMF belt. And and The Rock's a mate of his presented him with the belt. So really cool.
Really cool, and good company too to have.
Absolutely.
You also you were managing the event for Kim Kardashian when she was promoting a brand for someone in America.
Michael Hill Jewelers.
Michael Hill Jewelers.
So Michael Hill's incredible story as well. Yeah. He's based in, he started in New Zealand, then New Zealand, Australia.
Built up.
Biggest jewellery store in Canada. He's on both stock exchanges in Australia and in New Zealand. And they were giving away a 22-carat diamond ring. And I said, we should get Kim Kardashian to do it.
Why not?
They weren't quite certain who Kim Kardashian was, but after a couple of weeks they realised who she was. And on October the 18th in New York, we had Kim Kardashian launch the competition to find the world's best couple, which the prize was this $1 million 22-carat diamond ring. And then we flew private plane to Toronto and had an event there. Then we flew private plane to Chicago. And then I continued with Sir Michael Hill on the road, now Sir Michael, then he was Michael, on the road around North America. We went to Chicago, Calgary, Vancouver, Los Angeles, Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland for about 3 weeks, and had a great time, had fun. And I'm still friends with Sir Michael now. In fact, saw him recently.
Wow.
You know, always good memories and good times.
And I like you were talking about in the book how disciplined and how well prepared Kim Kardashian was in terms of, like, in terms of people, like, just so spot on, like ahead of time with everything.
Most professional person I've ever dealt with. She was, you know, punctual, but above and beyond. She was always there before I got there. She was there waiting at the airport for the private plane before I was.
Wow.
And a couple of times we had to say, "Can you go around the block again and wait till we're ready for you?" Like, she was early, and she was always immaculate. You know, she had a whole glam squad with her. You know, hair, makeup, PR person, meeters and greeters, which is fine. And she was, you know, she did anything you wanted, and she taught me how to step and repeat.
Yes, step and repeat with the photographers, with the media wall,
Exactly.
and you learn as you go. When you meet these people for the first time, whether it be Kim Kardashian, a former US president, or anyone, what is it a bit intimidating for you at first, or especially if it's the first time and they don't know you?
I just try and be respectful.
Yeah.
I think just being really polite and respectful, that's the most important thing. Once they're loose a bit, I can have some gags and do some jokes.
Yeah.
Sing a few songs, you know.
It's kind of like with dating almost. You first date, it's very formal, like a job interview. Then if it keeps going, hopefully you just, you know, you're not so formal, I guess.
Yeah, I think respect is a big thing.
Yeah.
And I try and look after them, just make sure anything they want, just say yes and fix it. You know, if there's a mistake, fix it. Even if there isn't a mistake, fix it. Just make everything, the customer's always right.
Yes. Customer's always right. And you are the reputation of having the go-to person in Australia. It said when in the Beaconsfield mine collapse, most people thought that you were in contact or already knew the men or their families and were going to you saying, do you have these details?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't finish up looking after them, but their family reached out to me, and I was happy to do it. And then in the end, I met them once they were out of the ground, and there was we fell down because I charged 20% commission.
Yeah.
And they said, "Would you do it for anything over $2 million? Would you do it for free?" And I said, "No, I've negotiated. I won't do it for free." You know, and so I never got to represent them. But I'm so grateful they're alive, and it's obviously a tragedy that somebody did die in there. But you know, it's you keep doing what you do.
Yeah. The first time I ever heard of the name Max Markson was when you were managing the young teenager...
Corey Worthington,
yes.
the party boy.
Yes, because I was the same age as him, and I saw him in that infamous, which is now forever in everyone's mind, a current affair interview where he's got the glasses and whatever the hell he was wearing. And then I saw you and you were managing him, and not long after that was on Big Brother. Did he contact you, or did you reach him, or how did that happen?
A friend of mine rang up and said, "You got to look after this guy." I said, "No, I don't want to look after him." No, you got to. I'd already done an interview saying I wouldn't look after him. And next thing, said, "You've got to. The media want to do interviews with him." Anyway, I finished up. I rang him. I said, "Come on, I'll fly up here. Let's meet." He said, "Oh, no, I can't. I'm under police arrest. I'm not allowed to leave the state." And I said, "Okay, I'll come to you." And I did a deal for him with, first of all, I did it with Current Affair, and because Today Tonight said they wouldn't touch it, and Current Affair bought it. Next thing, I did another story for him with Today Tonight, who paid me double the money, even though they said they wouldn't touch him.
Yeah.
And then next thing, I did a deal for MTV to come and film him to make a TV series. Then I think BT, Telstra in the UK wanted to use him. Next thing, he's on Big Brother. And I got him $50,000 for going on Big Brother for 10 days.
Because I remember he was hot at the time, like for whatever, but he was getting spots, he was getting gigs, and
yeah, no, we did well with him. We did well. I had a lot of money. I was his legal guardian at one stage.
Was he well behaved when he was around you? Like he followed you? Like
no, because I was the money.
Okay,
so I was respectful.
There you go.
But he still went walkabout and went, you know, like, still wrecked. We were in lockdown before going to Big Brother. The
studio,
a hotel on the Gold Coast, and he had two mates with him, so he didn't get bored. And next thing he's chucking stuff out the window and all sorts of. And then another time we flew back up there for the end of Big Brother, and he went missing for 24 hours. He'd followed some meter maid, and we didn't find him for another day. Like, he's a character, but now he's settled down. He's got married, and I did the deal for his wedding, and he had a wedding in Bali, and I did another deal for him and his dad, who I'd got on well with his family.
Do you try to work more with the adults than the kids, just because they're better behaved and they're
if I can make money for people, I'll do the deal. You know, it just depends on what it is and who it is.
Yeah. You were talking earlier, you do a lot of reality TV contestants, like Married at First Sight, and What are they like normally to work with or to collaborate
Look,
with?
most of them realise that this is not a long-term career, but as Andy Warhol said, you get 15 minutes of fame. So my interpretation, if I can take their 15 minutes and extend it for 17 or 18 minutes, then I'm doing my job. And there's, they're hot for a time. And you just try and make as much money for them as you can.
Yeah.
And at the moment, the whole Instagram world means they get paid collaborations. So we handle that for them. We do personal appearances for them. There's a certain window where you can do personal appearances. At the moment, we've got a number of them married at first sight. One's from the current series. Here you go. Tash from Adelaide, Chris from Adelaide, Alex from Perth, Hayley Vernon from Melbourne, Natasha Spencer from Sydney, and Steve Burley from Melbourne, who's got the Kingsman Barbershop. So, and I met with Alex and Ivan the other day because she was over from Perth. Ivan's her partner. And you just try and, once their Instagram following goes up, as it will, we'll monetize that for them. And I'm still looking after Jessica from Jessica Power and Sorel from last year's Maths. And I even did when Davina from 2 years ago had a baby, I did the deal for her for the baby. So you just do deals.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, which I will say as well, there's a lot of things you do that aren't as well known. Like we've talked obviously about the presidents, but you do a lot of smaller stuff, well not smaller, but just stuff that doesn't get as much recognition. Like you've done stuff for Bob Hawke, you do stuff for the reality stars, like you said, and on it goes. When I was reading, one of my favorite chapters was about Arnold Schwarzenegger. What did you make of him the first time you met him? Obviously, you knew him from
impressive.
the films.
I mean, I knew him from the first time I ever met him was actually in Los Angeles because I'd signed a contract or arranged a contract for him. Jamie McIntyre brought him over in 2013 to do 3 events in Perth, Sydney, and Melbourne. And I negotiated the contract, and as part of the deal, he'd agreed to do an hour of media interviews out of Los Angeles, which we organised. In this 1 hour, he did Today Show. Well, he actually did the pre-recorded the morning show from 7 till 10 past 7. Then we did live to air on Sunrise from 10 past 7 to 20 past 7. Then we pre-recorded for 20 minutes Today Tonight, which went to air later that day from 20 past 7 to 28. Then we went live to air on Today Show from 20 to 8 to 10 to 8. Then we did 10 minutes of interviews online. Wow. Then he kindly allowed us to do another phoner with for the Sunday papers around Australia for News Limited, and I had a photographer come in to take pictures for them as well. And as he was leaving, Channel 10 got him to do another grab. So I squeezed an hour in, and that was the first time I met him. And then I've got to go and meet Oprah Winfrey straight after that because we were trying to get her to come. But then when he came to Australia in June, I greeted him at the airport, and we flew from Sydney straight across to Perth, and we're sitting in the chairman's lounge, and I'm sitting opposite him like we're sitting here, and I'm in the chairman's lounge, and he's on a Skype call or FaceTime on his iPad, and he's saying to this person, "Yes, we've landed in Sydney. Now we have to go to Perth because someone has booked us to go to Perth all the way. Or we've got to hit to Sydney. Now someone has made us." And he smiles at me. But he's just a lovely man.
He is. He really
lovely
is the perfectionist. And I've been to the press conferences with you when he do the Arnold Classics every year. And he's one of those people when he walks into the room, you just feel that presence. You feel him somehow. He just. And when you see him in the exhibition at his Arnold Classic, I mean, the hordes of people that gather around him, he'll be walking by himself, the next second, 50 people in seconds.
He'll be here in March the 20th till the 22nd, the Arnold Sports Festival.com.au. Is a 3-day event, pulls about 70,000 people, 10,000 athletes compete in about 40 or 50 sports. It's really, really special. And this year there's the Frazzle.com inclusive sports festival. So a lot of the disabled athletes on the Friday the 20th will be competing, and Frazzle.com are the sponsors for it, who created this incredible program to help people communicate who are disabled or less fortunate than all of us and can't communicate. So this gives them the chance. Really it's got 14 apps in one, and if they can't communicate, they can press a button, "I'm hungry," or "Can you scratch my left ear?" Or it talks as well. Yeah. So Frazzle.com has been launched the next month or so. So he, in my opinion, is the most successful person ever, because he didn't just become a success in sport, as the world best bodybuilder. Didn't just become a success in business. He made millions before he went into the movies.
That's right.
Leading man in movies. Became governor of California, right? And he married a Kennedy. I mean, you couldn't get much better than that.
I know, he just ticks all the boxes.
He really does. And his 5 tips for success are, you'll get a takeout from this, guys, if you're watching this. If you've come this far with us. Arnold Schwarzenegger's 5 tips for success. 1, have a vision. For Arnold, he wanted to be a bodybuilder, wanted to be a movie star. 2, think big. Not just any bodybuilder, want to be the best in the world. Movie star, not just any, you want to be the leading man in movies. 3, don't listen to the naysayers. So we got to Hollywood, they said, you're not going to be able to be a leading man in movies. Look at the shape of your body. You might be a bodybuilder, you might be a bodyguard or a hitman, but you're not going to be the leading man in movies. Listen to your accent. Nobody has had an accent like yours and become a leading man in movies. And what's your name? Schwarzer Schnitzel? How's that going to look on the posters? And he used all of those to his advantage. 4th tip, work your ass off, which he's always done, even to this day, works hard. And 5th, give back. He chucked his movie career in to go and become the governor of, go into politics.
Twice.
And give back. So, incredible man.
He is. Someone who may want to be a star and they come to you, which I'm sure you get a lot of people coming to you all the time saying, Max, I'm a star, I'm a this, I'm a singer, I've got a book, help me, make me famous. Does that happen often to you? Just people knocking on the door?
And I always say publicly, I can make anyone famous.
Yeah.
You just need an angle. And then I say, just call me 0412 501 601. And I always answer the phone or leave a message and I'll call back or whatever. But I think everybody's got an angle. So whatever you want to be, you can be if you want to. And it's just obviously mental attitude. You've got to want to do it and you've got to have some sort of angle and then do it.
Who, and this is going to be a really hard one for you, who would be your favourite person if you could mention all the top, well actually no, top sort of favourite moments or experiences you've had in your years of being Max Markson, the PR guy, the publicity for the last 40 years?
I love getting stories in the paper. I mean, I always get a kick out of that, whether it's the story last week when we announced that Mel Gibson was coming for Cospendium, even, had Jean-Claude Van Damme did an interview last week that hit the Daily Mail online today. So I get a kick out of that. I enjoyed going to the airport and meeting a star for the first time. I just think I'm very lucky and blessed to have the life and the business that I have. Yeah. So right from day dot, when I was being the spotlight operator, that was a buzz. And then I was doing 50 pence a night. And on the Saturday night, the guy who was the stage manager said, "Look, I've got to go and do another gig tonight. You get a spotlight operator in, and you can be the stage manager." So I got £3 that night for being the stage manager.
Hardest thing in your job? It must be rest. It must be break, because you're always on the go. You're always moving. You're always doing something. The phone's always ringing. Sometimes there's a lot of stuff on at the same time. So for some people it could be overwhelming. I just try and just get everything done at the same time. I just try and do everything. So that, to me, I don't say it's hard. You just got to do it. You've got to focus on each one and get them all done. Is there anyone that you have not yet managed that you would like to, or trying to at the moment? You have to mention names, but I'm sure there's...
I think it'd be great to get Prince Harry and Meghan. I think they'd be a great tour. Yeah. And I could make serious amounts of money for them globally.
Well, now that they're on the sort of...
Well, they're available.
Available, yeah, and I suppose on the speaking circuit, so...
Yeah, but I think there's more than that. There's a lot more money that whoever's going to represent them could make a lot more money for them than people... I really believe they could make $250 million a year. I mean, serious money. Yes. And you look at the Hollywood, the Hollywood Reporter does a power list, and the Obamas are there in the middle. Yeah. And they've done a serious deal with like a Netflix. And there's a deal to be done with Harry and Meghan with a Netflix or a Disney, one of the major companies, for them to be able to do documentaries and stories, publishing, which can promote all their charities they want to do. There's so many. Everyone's got a story, but if their connections with so many different charities, they can do some serious good for the world, and they could set up a foundation that would make billions of dollars. Like Bill Gates has got the Giving Foundation. They could get whatever money they wanted from anywhere and give it away to charities around the world. They can do some incredible, incredible work.
They can. Max, any final words, any final wrap-ups? For our viewers watching this on the channel, what best advice can you give them business, entertainment, publicity? What can you say to them?
My best 3 tips for success are my 3 tips: persistence, enthusiasm, focus. That's all. If you anything in your personal life, your business life, your family life, you can solve any problem, achieve anything you want. Persistence, enthusiasm, and focus.
Max Markson, thank you for joining us on the Jake Freeman TV show. His book, On the Road, is available. On the Road with Bill Clinton, Nelson Mandela, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kim Kardashian, Mike Tyson, all the names, on and on, there's literally hundreds, is available. Thank you so much for joining
At
us.
booktopia.com.au.
Yes.
Thank you.